Hey, welcome back to the Personality Hacker Podcast. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge. A couple of weeks ago on the podcast, I revealed that I'm at a premise level questioning in my life right now. Like I'm going through all the sort of the things that I just made assumptions about, and I'm going back and reviewing my assumptions, and I'm allowing myself to have some time to really ruminate on some of these things, like very conscientiously making decisions. And one of the things I'm questioning myself around is whether or not I would like to basically meet my full potential as a person. Do I want to take Personality Hacker, or maybe not even this business, but just some of the things that I've learned or taught myself, or some of the skills I've developed? Do I want to take it to a bigger level? Or do I just kind of want things to stay the same and maybe just keep doing podcasts and running a smaller business and you know, seeing how that pans out? And I think one of the things that's been coming up for me is this idea that I might actually have a fear of success, something that I hadn't really considered before. We've talked on the podcast about imposter syndrome and the fear that you're going to be found out and everybody will know you're a big fraud. And there have been times I've had imposter syndrome, but I think most of the time I've been able to get through that by going, well, I think we're all kind of imposters on this planet. Like most of us are just sort of faking it until we make it. But this idea of fearing success, that's something that's been a new thought for me. Particularly because I've asked myself if I want to do something bigger, if I want to have this big impact, I've been sort of propagandizing myself for years and years that I want to have, then what's stopping me? Like, why would I all of a sudden go, maybe I don't want that? And while it could be that simply my ambitions don't authentically go that direction, like maybe it has been propaganda and I'm reevaluating all of this. But for the first time, I'm really asking myself, do I actually fear success? Is that something that I'm contending with? So on this podcast today, we want to talk about that. We want to talk about this idea of fearing success and what that looks like and what that can mean for you, the listener. You might not even realize that that's something that's going on, because I think we almost always sort of perspective shift and go, no, I'm fearing failure. But I think the fear of success is way more insidious. So we want to deconstruct that a little bit today.
We've been doing this podcast since January of 2014, week in and week out. We've been releasing pretty much once a week since then. I think we missed like 1 week early on when we first started. We've been going for a long time. We have over 200 episodes at this point. By the time you listen to this, it might be over several hundred. Who knows? And we have close to about 6 million total downloads in that time period. And a lot of people would look at that and say that's very successful for a podcast. And I think it is. I think there's a lot of success there. And I'm not giving you those numbers to brag. There's a point of why I'm telling you those. In fact, I tell you those numbers. I wish I could be bragging when I say those, but I look at people like Tim Ferriss, who I find out at the time of this recording has 300 million total downloads for his podcast. Every episode he releases, he gets several 100,000 downloads. And there's other people like Gretchen Rubin or Brene Brown who have podcasts and books, and they have massive audiences. And some of them, I think some of the podcasts started after ours did. And I look at these and I go, I think to myself, why? What is going on? I think Antonia and I create a really good podcast. We tend to get deep into topics. When people hear us, we have a lot of good ratings and reviews on iTunes. People seem to resonate. The comments seem to come back, and people like the podcast. And I'll sit and scratch my head and say, well, why are we not as successful with what we do here at this podcast as we could be? And I think in the past few weeks, I was telling you, Antonia, it just doesn't make sense. I feel like we do good work. We've been consistent. We've been building over time. We go and meet our audience. We talk to people. I think we've got a good thing going. We should be bigger than this. And the other day I stopped and I said, I wonder if somehow unconsciously we are fearing getting bigger, and somehow, I don't know exactly how we're doing it, but we're synthetically creating a smaller world for ourselves and a smaller reach than we could have if we removed the fear of success. So this has been something both of us, I think, have been playing with in the past few weeks. And you might be resonating with that. Maybe there's something in your life that you want to be bigger, or you think you should have a level of success you don't have. And oftentimes it's very counterintuitive to stop and think, well, what if it's me? What if it's nothing external from me, but unconsciously, somehow, maybe I'm the block. Maybe I'm the reason why the success that I, quote unquote, think I want isn't happening. We probably get the level of success we ultimately want in our lives. And so if I don't have the success I want, I'm speaking as Joel now, it's probably something to do with me. There's something that's going on for me, or the system I have running that's creating the emergent, that's my reality and the level of success I have. And I'm probably somehow having a block to go forward that other people have figured out a way through or around.
Yeah. I mean, there's practical reasons. I mean, our marketing could be better. And we also have a very targeted podcast. I mean, it's about personality types, which not everybody's into. So there's probably like specific things. And I'm sure we're going to get people writing in like, you should do this and you'll get bigger. And maybe somebody will have like an amazing scheme. But I think barring the idea that it's something that is logistical, I actually do believe that this is more psychological than it is logistical, because we'll create these like really, actually, I think pretty sophisticated marketing plans, and we may or may not follow through with some of them. Like I think we are throttling ourselves. And I believe that using this situation makes it a little easier to speak on the subject, because as, our podcast aside, like what we're doing right or wrong aside, I think this idea of fear of success is relatively universal, actually. I think most people, I've met a couple of people that don't seem to have it, but they don't seem to have it in the same way that, like some people just don't seem to have they don't seem to have problems in love. Like most people have some struggles in love, but just every once in a while you meet somebody who's like, nope, I met the love of my life at 17 and we've been married for 50 years and we'll die in each other's arms and it's fine. It's like, wow, that's cool and very rare. And I think I've met a couple of people in business who are like, yeah, I never question myself. I just go for it and it's no big deal. And I'm like, okay, but that's not usual. Most people have some fear of success. And I think it's because fear of success is a lot more complicated than failure. Like success is complicated. There's a lot that comes along with success. In particular, there's a lot of unknowns that come along with success. And so basically fear of success could also be called fear of the unknown. Fear of not knowing what is going to come up for you. We've all failed. I know what failure feels like. It doesn't feel good, but I've been there a number of times. So if I try something and I fall on my ass, I can pretty much sort of mentally replicate that experience inside of me because it's happened enough. But success always brings like a whole new terrain. There's always a whole new territory that comes along with success. And all of that asks of me something more than maybe sometimes I even believe I can give it. And so I think a piece of it too is this idea of, am I ready for what's coming? If I have success, will I be ready for what I've created? And if not, then will I fail even bigger? And is a bigger failure more painful, right? That whole adage of the bigger you are, the harder you fall. I think that's a piece of it as well.
I think that you're right. It is a mindset, because I remember as a young man reading books like Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, or other business books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or these books that would talk about shifting your mindset to be successful. And I used to be like, this is such BS. Really? Give me the to-do list of things to do. You keep talking about all these books I would read would talk about shifting your mindset and having a different mindset. And I thought, this is so ridiculous. Give me the recipe for success, for business success, for your creative success, whatever it is. And having got, levels of success in my life, we are successful to some degree. We live off of our business full time, right? And live a pretty good life. And I do look back and realize just how many of the mental shifts I had to make to get to this level. So I knew what it took to get to where I'm at right now. And so I look forward and I go, I think there is an unconscious part of me that goes, there's going to be a lot of work, like internal mental and emotional shifts that I'll have to let go of some things. I'll have to recontextualize other things. I'll have to shift my worldview in order to get to the level that I want to get to. And I think that one of the first things that comes up for me as we talk about this is just the sheer work it takes, not the physical work, not the to-do list work, but the mental work it takes to shift your mindset, to see things differently, to there's that saying, you got to let go or you got to, how's it go now? I was going to say it. You got to give up to go up, I think is what it is. Not let go. It's give up to go up. And that's been true in my life. I've had to give up certain things to be able to go up the ladder of success. And so I think the first thing that might be a stopping point for a lot of people, if you can identify this counterintuitive fear, first and foremost, I think the first thing is just the sheer amount of work, the mental and emotional work it will take in order to move forward toward your goals or to the things you want to create in your life.
Yeah, and it's not just financial, although it's easiest to track it that way for me, or it's easier to track it that way for me, because I have seen, like, my relationship with money has had to change over time. I mean, I came from a perspective or a paradigm that taught me that the more valuable something was, the more you gave it away. Like, you were not supposed to ask for any value exchange at all, and that's how you knew that something was, like, important and life-saving. And since then, I've realized that that's kind of an unsustainable model. Like, you have to be able to have value exchange for a couple reasons. First, you have to be able to, like, subsidize the thing you're doing, right? And the work you're doing needs to be subsidized. But also, people don't usually value things that are free. Like, their value exchange with whatever it is they're getting shows that they're invested. And so I've had to really, like, have a very different relationship with money from when I started. And so I can track it by going, okay, so my relationship with money shifted here and here and here. And I've had a big shift with money this last year too. In fact, so a friend of mine, Cheris, she's actually one of our team members. She does tarot readings, which are fascinating to me because I find tarot to be, I don't really ascribe to it mystical properties so much as I think of it as a way to unlock unconscious thoughts that you need sort of an access point or an on-ramp to get them. And so tarot to me has been really fascinating because, when I flip over a card or she flips over a card and kind of describes its meaning, I'll go, okay, so, there's a little confirmation bias in there trying to search for what it could be in my life and, like, sort of attach it to something that is happening. But oftentimes what more ends up happening is I find something that's buried deep in me that I didn't know was there until I was trying to make meaning from it. So for me, it's sort of a meaning-making platform. And I say that not because I want to disparage tarot. If you're into tarot and you see it as having mystical properties, I think that's fine. And if you're a person who thinks it's all bullshit, that's fine too. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. But the point is that this year, a lot of my cards, she does a tarot reading for me every year, a birthday reading where she tells me what my life card is. She reminds me what my life cards are because I forget every year. And then she tells me what my year card is, and then she tells me what the card is for each month. And most of my cards this year had to do, I'm in a devil year, which is really kind of interesting. It's a lot of letting go of preconceptions, especially in our relationship. And I've also had a lot of cards that had to do with my relationship with money. And I was like, man, I've done so much work around my relationship with money. What exactly do I have to do? And so that you and I went on a trip to LA to be a part of a business mastermind, and people who are in internet marketing and internet businesses and who create content. And we got into this. It was the mastermind happened in the Hollywood Hills in a $10 million house. And everybody around us was making, I mean, it was ridiculous how much more they were making. It wasn't like they were making 3 times as much as us. Like people, like somebody just sold their business for $160 million. And I'm like, okay, that's like, it was kind of pitiful having us in there surrounded by people who were like ridiculously successful when it comes to finances. And I had a big shift while I was in that room. I was like, oh, I think I might be thinking small. And what's interesting is right now we're in a time period, I think, where money and success around money is kind of under attack right now. It's the idea of, should we consider wealth redistribution? Is it wrong for businesses to make a lot of money? Is it wrong for, the 1% to have so much when so many have so little? And so there's a lot of questions, like social questions around money making and how we how we distribute resource. And I think for me, the relationship shift I had with money was sort of like a realizing that I'm thinking so small that that people around me, like I was around extraordinary wealth, and the people around me were not necessarily using that wealth the way that I would have used it in my mind. I'm like, man, you have such a leverage point here. You could be doing so much with the resource you have. And some of the people who were in that situation were looking for ways to give back, and others didn't give two craps about, they got theirs and they were done. And so I was like, man, I'm thinking really small. And if that, I mean, not to disparage anybody in the room, but I was like, if that guy can make that money, I can make that money, right? Like, I think I could do that. And then I would do so much good with it, right? Which, of course, is always the thought we have. And I think what this fear of success that's sort of been striking me lately is if my mind has been sort of blown open to the possibilities of how small I've been thinking, then the next question becomes for me is the adage of like, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And let's say I got, to a place where I could build a business that generated that kind of wealth. And would I actually give back, or would I become a scum bucket? Like does money make you a bad person? Which is not something I actually believe, but the fear of success is all sort of wrapped up in like, who would I have to become to get there? Like, what sort of person would I have to be? Would I still recognize myself at the end of that road? And I think that that's one of the biggest challenges with when you're sort of weighing whether or not you want to go down the roads of success, is this idea of like, who do I have to become to get there? And do I know I can do it with integrity?
Yeah, I think these are questions people ask themselves, right? And I think that you speak to that. People, okay, so there's this notion of power too. Like there's this, there's a conversation about wealth, but I think also in our public consciousness right now, there's this question about power, and often successful people get power with success. And there's a lot of questions. Well, is power? You talked about absolute power. Is it corruptible automatically? Can you not be corrupted with it? And there's some arguments that no one should have extreme wealth or extreme power. And one thing I think that we don't always think about is when someone has extreme wealth or extreme power, often a lot of things come along with that create a sense or a level of responsibility that's not as intuitive to people on the outside, but it's very visceral for the person that has created wealth or power or success in their life. And I think that responsibility, we unconsciously know that. In the core of our being, we know that when you have a lot of success, when you have a lot of wealth, when you have a lot of power, you have a target placed on you in some ways. People want to exploit it or take it or come after you or cozy up to you to get something. Like there's often a lot of other weird things that come with those things. I think we kind of unconsciously know that. We see maybe celebrities from afar that seemingly are very successful, and we see how complicated their lives are and how much people want from them. Or we see business people getting sued or having they're being pursued. Or we see people with a lot of success now having to defend their success. A heavyweight champion has to now defend their title every year, in the ring, so to speak, metaphorically speaking. Now they're the champion. They have everything to lose. The Super Bowl winners from last year have to defend their title this year. And so there's this sense of when you get into that position, you are, in a way, in a defensive place. You have to defend against where you've gotten to with success. I think so. This is it's a little abstract, but this is kind of what's rolling through our minds, I think, as people when we look at success and we have that unconscious sabotage or fear of success. I think that's what's going on a lot. Is we have a sense of what that means for us.
Yeah, it's the fear of loss, even though you haven't gathered the thing that you're going to lose yet. And so do I want to build this up only to possibly lose it at some point in the future? And yeah, I think there's so many different facets to this concept of success. I mean, and of course, when I talk about being around people who had a lot of wealth, success doesn't have to necessarily be represented in those kinds of figures. Like success can just simply be like you you are making the impact you want to make. And having the impact you want to make, or being able to do that, usually comes with it, like you said, a lot of responsibility. So again, like I said, it's easiest to track sort of my passage with money because I came from such a poverty mindset initially, and I'm not there anymore. I've done a lot of work to not be in a poverty mindset. I try to be in an abundance mindset. But if I'm looking at things in a less like very specific way, like with money, I've also seen who I've had to become in other ways by recognizing that, like, this idea of being a leader, right? Like I was the first to rush to the idea of being a thought leader. That I just loved the idea of being a thought leader, and I was like, I'm a thought leader. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, kinda, but what am I really leading people to? Like, oh, I like my thoughts, I'm going to tell people my thoughts. And it's like, well, okay, maybe some people observe it, but like, where like leadership actually means going someplace. Like, you're actually leading people someplace. And it took me a long time to kind of figure out, like, I think I'm a pretty bad leader, actually. I'm pretty crappy. And so then I had to start focusing on this concept of leadership skills. What does leadership mean? I'm kind of a crappy leader in my business. Maybe I should work on that. And so I've noticed that I've had to develop so many new skills, and I'm not even close to being where I need to be. So I think the success piece also reminds us that it's not just, am I going to be a good person at the end of it? Maybe that's even, maybe that's a smokescreen. I think another piece of it is, am I going to be able to build all the skills I need to build to get to where I want to go? Like, am I competent and capable enough to be the person I need to be? Not just like, am I corruptible, but am I competent? Not just can I be a good person when I get there, but can I be a capable person when I get there? And if I've already put myself on the trajectory, then as I'm building these skills, am I going to be able to sustain that? And like you mentioned, once I get there, I might have to defend what I've created. I might have to, like you said, sometimes you get a target on your back. We get primarily positive feedback for the podcast and the content we produce. And that's nice. We get primarily positive feedback, but we're also pretty small, right? Like, we're not big potatoes or anything. And so if things get bigger, then, we're going to have more people pay attention to us. And there's going to be a bit of a target, like you mentioned, not just with trolls or whatever, but also with opportunists and people who want to be a part of it. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but it just is like an extra layer of complication or stress. So success brings with it extra stresses. And the question is, okay, so I have to become this person. I have to build all these skills. I have to be competent. I have to defend what I've created. I have to not be an asshole at the end of all of this. And also I have all these layers of complication. Is this worth it?
Yeah, and I've been examining my own motivations a lot lately around this specifically. And I want to harken back to the last podcast we just did on the firm model. As an EP, I mean, I think my fear of success, if I could distill it down, is I don't want to be a prisoner to any success I create in my life. And I've noticed that that's one of the core fears is I create something. Let's say we built a company or a movement up into, millions of dollars and tons of reach and lots of books and we start publishing other people and we start to build this thing really big and a movement that's really big. Well, now let's say a couple years from now, I decide I want to go a different direction. Well, I'm almost abandoning the thing I've created, and there'll be an expectation that if you build something, you're going to stick with it, and it's your passion for the rest of your life or something. And I'm like, I don't want to be a prisoner to my own success. So, well, how I'll avoid that is I'll just keep delaying going towards success. I mean, I don't think any of this is conscious, right? I've tried to make it more conscious for me. But as an EP, I crave freedom. I want freedom in my world. And so that's kind of, to harken back to the last podcast on fixations, I think there's a unconscious motivator here to always have my options open and not create a success that will lock me into one thing. I think the fear we have, you and I, we've talked about this before, is what happens if we become typecast or labeled as the typology people, just Myers-Briggs and Enneagram, and that's it. And we really want to talk about personal growth stuff. And we want to talk about the ways to be a better person, or maybe we want to talk about relationships or male-female dynamics or something like this. And now we've pigeonholed ourselves with a successful business around Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, and typology. And now we can't talk about some of those things. And so what we've done is we've injected into the podcast a lot of personal growth stuff. We don't just talk about typology all the time. We talk about things like the fear of success, right? Like we're talking about today. And the reason we do that, I think, as two EPs, unconsciously and consciously, is we don't want to be labeled or typecast into one category where we'll feel stuck. And at the same time, that's sabotaging like if we wanted to grow bigger, we would only talk about type every single podcast and deep dive on it and just talk about Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, and maybe a couple other type systems and just keep hammering that every single episode, no matter what. Every single blog post. Don't talk about personal growth topics. Don't talk about all this other stuff. Just talk about typology with the name Personality Hacker, and we probably would be much more successful than we are now. But we're afraid that we'll lock ourselves into something, and so we've been much more freeform with our content. It's a little bit out of the category, so to speak, and we've tried to kind of retrofit it in there, and I think it's worked. I think you listening have probably benefited from it, hopefully. It's been helpful for you if you've been a long-term listener, or if you're a new listener, hopefully it will be helpful for you as you go back and listen to some of the episodes. I think it's powerful, and yet I think this is some of the, I'm giving you a tangible example of maybe how this could look for you. Maybe there's an example in your life you're thinking of now as you're listening to go, okay, maybe I'm doing something similar in this way over here.
Yeah, well, and the harkening back to the firm model is great because there's probably a lot of fears around being vulnerable when you're successful, like that target we talked about. That's not as big one for me. Like the target on my back is not, that doesn't worry me as much. It's like it's pretty low on the totem pole of the things that I fear. But I could see being an IJ and that being a big fear, or having people come after you and tell you you're wrong all the time. That would be a big fear for an IP, right? Or maybe not being able to control the situation and control the growth might be something that would, be a fear for an EJ. So yeah, depending on your type, there's probably something specific to you that is sort of the linchpin of the fear of success. But I think for all of us, there's this idea, and we keep using ourselves as an example because it's the example that is in front of us. But I see other people also struggling with this. I've seen, sort of people in our field who we have somebody who's who's sort of a professional friend who has been making a lot of tweets lately about the struggle that they're having with their personal life, just being overwhelming, and whether or not that's going to interfere with their ability to continue creating content. And it's like they're getting big, they're getting bigger, and they're getting more attention, and it's becoming more overwhelming than they probably thought it was going to be. And now they're like, do I want to be doing this? I can just almost hear the conversation happening. You get to a certain point of getting bigger and having impact, and you're like, wait, it's almost like you didn't think you were going to succeed. Like that's kind of, I think, where we're at. It's sort of like, I didn't think I would even be here. So do I want to keep going? And so I think the fear of success is actually, a lot of times it's sort of the moments of reevaluation of is this worth it? And I think for me, even though I'm definitely still mired in this situation, like I'm still asking lots of questions, I'm still giving myself time. I think what it comes down to is if I'm being really radically honest with myself, if I'm really truly being honest with myself, I recognize that most of my challenges around this are they show up as garden variety procrastination. It shows up as like me feeling like I'm lacking ambition. It's me just sort of going, maybe I'll just do something else, and really kind of pushing away what is effectively a fear of my life changing in ways that I'm afraid that my life will change in a way that, like you said, I'll be a prisoner to it. I won't be able to control it anymore. I won't be able to, I'll be a servant to the thing that I've created. And I'm going to do it anyway. No matter what life I create, I'm going to be a servant to it effectively, because it'll be the life that I'm living. And it'll be the choices that I've made, and I'll have to stick with them, and I'll have to be in alignment and integrity with them. So it doesn't matter whether or not this is me, like let's pretend I just go ahead and lack ambition and procrastinate and kick the can or whatever. Whatever life I live or whatever life I create, I'm going to be not a prisoner to it, but I'm going to be responsible to it.
Beholden to it.
Yeah, I'm going to be beholden to my choices. Exactly. And so then I have to ask, well, I get one shot at this. I get the one life. So how epic do I want to create it? And the answer, no matter what I say, is the right answer.
Yeah.
As long as it's honest, as long as it's true and honest, it doesn't matter which answer I said, which one it was. And I'm still going to be attracted to something bigger. I'm still going to be attracted to impact. So I think it really is a matter of being very honest with myself. It's a matter of being really introspective, because it's okay no matter what answer I give, as long as it's true.
We've been talking a lot about our personal experience, and I'm going to throw out a couple ideas for you listening, and maybe you resonate with one of these as well. Success doesn't have to be building a big business or a big movement or something. It could be just doing a small project. It could be the art project you want to do, or, going for that major in school. And it's a little bit more challenging than the easy major you could just kill, right? Or maybe it's starting a video channel on YouTube and starting to create, vlogs or a blog or something. And I think some of our resistance to success is that if we have success as something that we have in the future or outside of ourselves, and we just dabble a little bit, we can say, man, that was pretty good what I just did there, XYZ project. But if I'd really given it 100%, you should see how amazing it would have actually been. It's a way kind of for our ego to go, we fear giving it 100% or giving it our all. I struggle with this too, because then the reality has to come to bear in front of us of what we are actually capable of. It's so much easier to live in an idealized, someday when I take my invention business idea or my art project and I execute on it, this is going to be the results. It's so much easier to live in that fantasy world than to go to attempt it and maybe give it 100%, and it wasn't the ideal you thought it was going to be. And here now you feel like, oh man, people are going to, I'm not as good as I thought I was. So you have to basically account for how good you think you are in the world when you go ahead and give it your all.
Yeah, our 6 million podcast downloads is it's pretty much the cap. It's well, if we had really tried, if we had really implemented those marketing, strategies, we would have been through the roof. And it's maybe you just aren't as good as Brene Brown.
I've actually said that. I've actually said this sometimes. If we really turned on the marketing really hard, we would be a lot. I've said this to our team and other people. Yeah.
We just have to turn on the tap. We just have to turn on the tap, and it's all going to explode. And it's maybe we're just not that good.
Yeah, but I think we do a good job. I don't want to be disingenuous. I really think this. Quite frankly, I think I like our podcast because I would listen to it if I was listening to podcasts. I think it's an amazing podcast. I think it's amazing. I like it a lot.
This is a very ENFP to ENTP conversation too, because Joel's always no, it's incredible, and I'm But I think it's good too, but I'm just kind of throwing out there, you're right. That's, I'm trying to sort of prove the point.
No, I know, I get it.
Which is maybe we're, we fluff ourselves up and go, our podcast is amazing. It's it's good, maybe, and it's probably could be better, and there's lots of things we could be doing. But again, effectively, the point was, it's so much easier to say what could have been had you not give it your all.
Or what could be at any moment. When I get serious about this art or whatever, it's going to be amazing. But I'm waiting till this XYZ happens in my life or whatever, and you're holding back, and you just never give it that 100% effort. And so it can be a fantasy of yours of success. So I think this is one possible fear of success you might be dealing with listening. I don't know, depending on your story or how you're wired. I think also just the fear of having to change and be different. When we change and have success in our lives, whatever that is, small or great, people don't necessarily interact with us the same way they used to. They might treat us differently, or the relationships might have to change. There's a dynamic that will shift, and now people don't know how to relate to us. So I think we also can possibly fear that the devil I know is better than the devil I don't know in a lot of ways. And so this could also hold us back from success.
And success is also lonely. The more success you get, the lonelier it becomes. I think that this is something that it's a very high quality problem until you get there, and then it's just a problem. It's hard to find people who you can relate to. It's hard to find people who will understand. It's hard to find people that may or may not be opportunistic. And I think it's the challenges you experience when things are going well because there's always challenges. You're always swapping problems, really. I mean, fundamentally, life is just a big problem swap. You solve one batch, another batch show up. And that's, like I can't remember who it was that had the quote that life is more like wrestling than it is like dancing. And that's what it is. It's just, it's a lot of wrestling through life. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a struggle, but nobody's free of challenges. The challenges you experience as you gain success, people usually are not very sympathetic to them. They don't care. Like they're like, oh, boo-hoo, right? And so one of the reasons why it's lonely is it's hard to find people who will sympathize with the challenges you're experiencing because they can't relate to them necessarily. And those challenges come with a lot of benefits. And so it's hard to it's hard to be sympathetic of challenges that seem to come with so many benefits. They don't feel like real problems anymore. So I think another challenge of fear of success is that if you do too well, it's alienating, and that's one of the things you have to sort of weigh in the balance too when you're determining how big you want to get.
I think the other piece too is there's a lot more resources for failure than there are for success. So if you are struggling, or you have healing to do, or you failed, or there's something, I mean, there's a lot of therapists in the world. There's a lot of people that can help. There's a lot of people that are willing to help people that are down and out, or having challenge, or struggling. And as you begin to get success, kind of to speak to what you just said, it's lonely, but also there's less resources. In other words, there's less, you do a project and it takes off and you have success. It's like there's not as many people that can help you navigate that landscape. It's not like there's a ton of counselors and coaches that are ready and able to help coach you through the success you've created in your life. It becomes not only lonely because you lose people, but lonely in the journey itself of knowing what to do next. Because often successful people have gotten there maybe counterintuitively, or they've just sheer worked themselves into that success, or they've tried something new or different. And other people don't have that same experience that you have when you create that success, whether it's small or large success. So they don't know how to come and help you move through that or navigate or understand how to do that. So now you've got this whole new set of challenges, and you look around. I think this is, we haven't had a ton of success, but this has been a personal experience of mine too, as I look around and I look for peers that have a business about the size of ours with the reach that we have. And it's hard to find people around the same level that we're at. Because when we got here counterintuitively, we got here by doing things so different that you can kind of get some help from people that maybe have done it similarly, but there's not a lot of people that have built the exact thing that we've built in success. They have done this project that we have done here. And so you have to kind of hodgepodge the advice together. And I think instinctively we know that. We know that we go down a road, we're not going to have the templates or the help. We'll have to rely upon ourselves more, our intuition, our counterintuitive thoughts, the way we see the world. And so there's a level of self-trust, I think, that comes with it, is as you gain success, you have to realize that, well, I have to trust and rely upon myself and my own instincts and my own wiring to get me through this, because there's not a lot of other people that may have gone down the road I'm going down.
Yeah. On the flip side, one of the nice things about gaining in success is the amount of self-esteem that comes along with it. And even though all success has a big node in the system of luck, and you can't take credit for that. It's just, luck is just luck. Like, you were at the right place at the right time, and nobody is successful without a helping of luck in there. And so you can't fully take credit for it. And at the same time, luck is not the only thing that will get you there. And so having navigated through certain things and done it with, counterintuitive, and put the hard work in and that sort of thing, and watched yourself grow through the process, watched yourself meet the challenges that come up, and know that maybe you didn't really have very many people to rely on. You had to rely on yourself, and you made it through. I think the nice thing about the self-esteem that grows with it is that you start to recognize, when I get there, I'll be ready for it. I think we've talked about this in previous podcasts too. So if you are listening to this and you recognize in yourself a fear of success, that is probably looking like garden variety procrastination or garden variety lack of ambition. And you're going, maybe I'm procrastinating because of this thing. One of the things we've addressed in the past, and I can attest to, is that whenever when you get to that summit, right, you're climbing the mountain and it doesn't look like you have the ability, the ability to climb that mountain. Like it just feels too much. By the time you get to certain precipices, you've made yourself ready for the next one. Like you've done the hard work to become the person who's now ready for the next level of challenge. And that's how everything works. If you aren't ready for it, then the mountain will buck you off. Like you'll get hemorrhaged pretty quick. But that's usually not how that works. Most of the time, as we're building the skills and resources and becoming the kind of person we need to be to get there, we are ready for the next batch of challenges. I think success, one of the biggest challenges is making sure that we keep the good parts of who we are through all of it and maintain our integrity. And a climb to success with integrity is a harder climb. There are lots of things that can be gamed. There are a lot of things that can be hacked. There are a lot of ways that we can gain through not good, not great ways. So being the kind of person who not only is ready for those challenges, but you still recognize on that climb and you're still proud of that person, that's a tougher climb for sure, no question. And when you do that, the amount of impact you have is crazy. And I suspect, even though I'm still in my sort of, what do I want to do? Do I want to go to the next level? Do I want to stay here where I'm at and all this? Actually, it's kind of therapeutic talking about it, quite honestly. But I suspect that knowing that the impact is going to be the impact I want it to be, doing it with integrity the entire way, knowing it's a tougher road, but knowing that it's a better road. I think that makes the ROI worth it, and it's just a matter of doing it, of jumping in.
If you are listening right now, and you have that that art project, that school major, that business you want to start, that blog you want to start, that thing you want to pursue and create success in your life, or maybe you have already started pursuing it and you've filled a stall. I think one of the things that I've been asking myself a lot, and I think you could ask yourself this too, is if you went for that, if you remove the barriers, if you could think and bring awareness to the things, we posited a couple ideas here today about some things that might be blocking you from that success. So identifying those around, so having some awareness around it. The question I've been asking myself, once I've identified those and I can go, okay, I can remove that and then move forward in success, and I still have resistances come up, I've been saying to myself, what am I preserving here? Like I'm going to be dead in 50 years. My life will be over in probably 50 to 60 years if I'm lucky. And at the end of my life, I'm going to look back and go, man, I wish I'd done this or I wish I'd done that. I might have regrets. And I'm sitting here now looking forward saying, well, what do I fear like preserving? Like what is worth preserving? I guess life is worth preserving. But other than that, reaching and trying, is that Samuel Beckett quote that you quote all the time, Antonia. Actually, you should say it because you have it memorized. I don't.
Ever tried, ever failed, no matter. Try again, fail better. Fail again, fail better.
And I think that's the key here is, this message is to me too, as you're listening, is what am I preserving? What am I holding on to? What am I waiting for? What is my ego attached to that I'm fearing that success and what it'll bring? And we've identified some of those things today, but what is that in your life? And we'd love to hear you come over to personalityhacker.com directly below this podcast. What is it that's stopping you from whatever success that you want to create in your life? Come and let us know what you're achieving or striving for. And just mark down there what is the thing that you think is blocking you. If you have a fear of success, what is it and why is it showing up? I want to hear your story. I want to hear what's going on for you. You can also join our community of like minds over at facebook.com/personalityhacker or twitter.com/personalityhack, HACK.
And if you enjoyed this podcast, you can subscribe to us on iTunes and various Android platforms. And if you want us to be as big as Brene Brown, which I don't know, we'll see. You can leave a rating review on iTunes. It helps us out a lot.
My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
And we'll talk with you on the next Personality Hacker podcast.